what if we, and I don't know what the answer is, but what if we did something where we set a boulder that's in the grade that's supposed to be, but what if we do it where we also are consciously like having some eliminates or some like alternative options that are not maybe obvious and that are different, and then you guys can leave them up or you can take them down. But like, I'm not saying this is the idea, but one could be like, if we use this thing a little bit, you could easily see, okay, something starts here and it goes for the V2 or whatever it is, it goes right, and it's like a line, a clear line. But if you climb up straight to the arete, it's like maybe super hard and just totally different. And then maybe, you know, in the interest of just asking the climbers the question, and like, this guy's just up there as a finish hole,
right?
And it's a green, it's not V2, or you guys could do something else with it later. I don't know, something like that. Something where we're just like playing with it, or a feature in the middle, and then, you know, branches or something. I don't know.
More context than just a single boulder that just goes up.
Yeah. I'm gonna spin the crap out of it.
Crossover. Nice.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you have to tell? Yes! So nice!
Never had so much fun 10 inches off the ground.
Normally we like give the climber the boulder, and then there's some questions to how do you do the boulder. Depending on what you do with labeling this is like, what's the boulder? Which I kind of like maybe ask the questions to the climber, see what they think.
Yeah.
Because even right now, if you just walked up and we're like, what's going on here? Most climbers are like, well, clearly they're not finished yet. But if you just left it, one way or another, they're going to try doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what are we doing?
Well, I feel like what we just did in there was kind of, in some capacities, for a lot of people that go into a commercial gym, like pretty mind melting. They're just like, what? I don't understand. How do I do this? What do I do? What's
Was
the
it
point?
good or not
What's
good
the
that we
point?
did that?
I think it's good, but at the same time, it puts climbers in the situation to figure things out for themselves, which is a huge part of climbing and a huge aspect of route setting. But a lot of the times, we're left to differentiate what's best for certain scenarios. Is it best for us to say, here, figure this out? Or is it best for us to say, here's what we want you to do, force feed versus make them figure it out?
That's what I was going to ask. That's one of the questions I thought to ask you. If I was going to ask you questions, one was going to be like, are we supposed to make the climbers happy? I don't know. I don't know if we're supposed to make the climbers happy. I mean, there's comp setting versus commercial setting, but just
Right.
in the general sense, like, is our job to make the climbers happy?
I would say, in my opinion, the closest I can get to answering that is that our job is to make people enjoy the sport of rock climbing.
Nice.
And there are capacities in which the enjoyment is the challenge, right? You're getting satisfaction out of having to figure something out. And if everything's always spoon-fed to you constantly, then sometimes you're not enjoying the process nearly as much as if you have to work for it. You have to work to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, you try a project outside, you try a project in the gym for yourself outside of route setting altogether, and there's an immense satisfaction in unlocking something and figuring something out. And so for route setters to not provide that aspect of climbing, then I would say that's a disservice to the sport of climbing in itself.
That's why I like what we played with, because why not? I don't know. Just why not? Why not set 2 starts and 2 finishes and see what the climbers want to do, or have eliminates, or and I don't know. Are they not going to be climbed in the gym, or are they going to get confused, or will people not like it? Will you get bad feedback because of it? Maybe you'll get some good, some bad. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, with change, as always, it's going to come with some people not liking it. It's different. I don't understand it. Me not understanding makes me uncomfortable, makes me not like it, right? Whereas others will say, I really love the ability as the climber to kind of improvise and figure things out in maybe different capacities than I normally would.
Do you think there's an element of that that's like the difference in climbers that might have started to climb in gyms when they were climbers already 20 years ago or something, or like maybe when you started climbing, or I started climbing or whatever, versus today when people's first experience is to pay to go to a gym often, and then not be force-fed, to just be like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you do it, versus is there a mindset of like climbers who started climbing outside, or I don't know, in gyms from a different time where what they were interested in was to be challenged. Has that changed, or has it not changed? I don't really know. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a good question. I mean, I feel like you must deal with it all the time in the gym.
Yeah, certainly. I feel like there are people who come in who like to understand the rules of the game, if you will, and try and play the game by the rules, and that's the context in which they understand their experience, right? I would say that as somebody who's just climbed for a long time and knowing people who have climbed for a long time, you start to find ways to enjoy and engage in climbing outside of, here's a start, here's a finish, did you do it, did you not, right?
Maybe that doesn't come at the start, though.
Yeah, oftentimes I don't feel like it does, but I don't know that it always has everything to do with outside versus inside, much as just experience and understanding climbing on maybe more of a level than, again, just here's the start, here's the finish. But I'm always curious of just even if you clearly define the boundaries of climbing, of a boulder problem, where do you draw the line between pushing somebody's understanding of climbing in a commercial setting, especially for that level of climber? And what I mean by that, to explain that a little more, is let's say you set a V3, but that V3 has this complex sequence of pushing and stemming and using these big holds maybe as feet that if you try and use them as hands, it doesn't go, or it's like nearly 3 grades, 4 grades harder. Right. So where do you draw that line between, I'm trying to get you to broaden your understanding of movement, and by doing something that you would never see at this grade normally, you're going to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, in the beginning, people do that and they hate it. because they don't get it. You know?
That's what's funny for me, because I always look at it like there's just a difference between the lens of who you are as a climber versus who the climbers are that you're setting for.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in comp setting, that's just it, and commercial setting too. You're setting for everybody else. You're
Right.
not setting for yourself. You learn that pretty quickly, and if you don't, it's probably going to be hard to be successful in any way as a setter.
Yep.
At the same time, like when I think about it, I'm trying to work from my own motivation, and my own motivation as a climber is I want to figure things out. Like that's what I want to do. But it may not be everybody else's motivation. So connecting to that and like finding that line between, I want to try to get people in a position where I'd like to be, where I'm trying things that I don't understand at first. And if I understand them at first, then they're less interesting to me. But maybe that's just me. So, I'm with you. Like, I don't know. I almost wonder if like, is there a line aside from like keeping people reasonably safe? Considering
of course.
Them being safe in the gym. But is there a line at all? Is there any reason not to try to get them asking questions that they haven't asked before, regardless of the level, in every case, and put them into, not put them, but present situations to them that they don't automatically know what they're expected to do? Is that good in every grade level, for every climber, first timer, whatever? I feel like it is. I feel like, why not?
I would say in a commercial gym, you have so many different user groups that are coming in and so many different people that are trying to get something out of climbing. So you can't have all one or all the other, right? It's a piece of a pie, right? And maybe you look at your user groups and you say, man, we have a ton of people that come in and they love climbing and maybe they're getting strong, but they're not necessarily progressing from like a technical standpoint or from a conceptual standpoint. And so you start providing them with a little bit more opportunity to experience that. But the thing that I noticed, because last week I set a few boulders in a lower end difficulty range that were far more complex than what we would normally see for that level of climbing. And most people, they try them because they think, okay, this is in my range, I should be able to do this, and they can't seem to figure it out. They have no idea how to figure out the boulder, and maybe they get frustrated and they say, screw this problem, I'll never do this, whatever, and they leave and they walk away. But the whole time they're always kind of watching to see, is that person trying that boulder? Because they want to know the answer, right? They've essentially decided that they can't solve the problem, but they still want to know what the solution is. Right. And then when it happens, when either you walk up and you're like, oh yeah, I tried it this way, they come and ask you what happened, like how you're supposed to do it. Or they come back later, they see somebody else do it. Then all of a sudden they've not only experienced that problem solving process, but they've learned something that they otherwise didn't understand before, right?
Yeah.
But you can't have only that. You can't have just that.
Yeah, but that also, I'm with you, I hear that. I think it's a reflection at the core of the fact that if anyone's going to be interested or stay interested in climbing, they're going to have some component of wanting to solve something they don't initially understand. Like everybody. And because if that's something they don't like at all, I feel like it's a fair question. Is it for them? Because you can just train in climbing, or maybe just do ladders all day long and just make the ladders progressively difficult as you succeed as a climber. But I've never seen anyone like get into that and do that and feel like they're going to be a climber that way. Everybody's got something about it. At least I feel this way, and I feel like it's the majority of why I climb or why I'm into setting is just that. Is trying to, like, there's a problem I don't understand, or I could create a problem that I don't know what the solution is initially. I don't even know what I'm creating, and then see what the solution is, or if somebody else figures it out later. And like that's the piece of it that's as essential to climbing as anything else.
But it's a really good point, because that's also really scary for a lot of route setters, right? A lot of setters, they get into route setting and they are comfortable doing what they understand, and the idea of I put something on the wall and I don't maybe understand how it works it seems very like taboo, or very inexperienced as a root setter. But one of the things that I've talked with a few of our root setters here is I always go through and try and explain the difference between just a good root setter and a great root setter.
Oh, okay, that's a good question.
A good root setter and a great root setter, to me, out of 10 climbs, whether they be roots or boulders, a good root setter, out of those 10, maybe sets 5 that are good, 3 that are great, and 2 that are just okay, if not, maybe not worth climbing again. Mm-hmm. The great root setter takes those 2 and makes at least one of them good and one of them great, if not both of them great, right? You never see somebody who's a great root setter put something on the wall that you're like, that is awful, I would never climb that again, right? And I've lived by this kind of idea for a long time and trying to get people to take the bad out of their game, right? The more I thought about it, and especially as of late, the difference between a great root setter and a world-class root setter is that they're able to look at root setting in a way that doesn't have all of the answers. Every time, it's not always as clear-cut and concise and regimented as you would think. A lot of root setters are like, oh, when you do this, it means that, right? Very formulaic type of root setting.
Right.
When I've sat with people who are what I would consider world-class root setters, you put something on the wall and you say, maybe it works like this, maybe it doesn't. I have a feeling it's kind of going to go this way, but we'll figure it out, and by doing so, we'll come up with a better product, a better end result than if I had said, I know it works this way, let me do it that way.
I'm trying to make it work.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the difference in a way, or it seems to me somewhat the difference between the idea, which I used to think was the way, or push forward as the way of forcing moves versus seeing what works with moves, or even now, like in competition setting, especially talking about, well, if you're trying to get something to happen, to challenge the climber in a particular way, or to make it look cool, and for the show of competition climbing, and to separate the field, to see like whether or not someone, whether or not everyone can do this thing you're going to present, and then at the end of the day, to force people to do things is just maybe not the answer. And that's, if you're thinking that way, that's the way that it's like, well, this is how this works, so I have to just basically adapt to it working this way. You start from the standpoint that there's kind of only one way it works, but that's what you're saying is no, it's not. That's just not climbing. That's not the way climbing is. Or you can push things that way to a degree. You can learn a lot. I still think you can learn a lot, maybe from thinking that way in certain modes, but not always, because if you do, you're just limiting yourself and everybody that's going to climb. But I think that's an interesting challenge, because like, I mean, I've taught a lot of setting clinics and courses and stuff, and I've changed how I think a little bit about that. I wonder what you think too, with respect to newer setters that start in the gym, and how you adapt with them. What are the best things for newer setters to try to think about to be able to become good, let's say, or great even, in as soon as, sooner rather than later kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have come to think about is in the very beginning of a root setter's kind of professional growth, oftentimes it's, okay, you're on the crew, here we go, like here's your tools, here's what you're going to set, go for it, right? And then they get to try and set whatever they envision setting, right? Oftentimes without very many fundamental understandings of how movement mechanics actually work. And I think that's a huge I think it's short-sighted from their managers, right? So I think the better thing in the beginning is to learn the basic fundamentals of how people move on a wall, and to understand that first and foremost before starting to try and blow the doors off and set these things that you watched happen in a comp, right? And that's hard, like I always make correlations to golf. I love to golf, and they say as a kid the best thing to do is give your kid a putter and a ball, right? Why would you give your kid a driver? Teach the kid how to putt first, right? You got to learn the basics of how the ball moves, how it rolls around. You have to understand first how to move up and down a wall before you start trying to set these complex movements. Complexity is really fun. People like that. They enjoy that a lot more. But I don't think you get to the point of understanding how to set these more complex type of situations without first having a basic fundamental knowledge of how to do this.
Sure. Having the vocabulary.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the movement.
Yeah, and that's like, it's kind of a bummer to think about it that way, because the first thing people want to do is set the coolest thing. I'm a good climber, I understand how to move, let me set the coolest thing I can possibly think of. But it doesn't lead to a long evolution of growth as a professional route setter.
Interesting.